Hi, I'm Stefan Null. Welcome back to Visual Impact series of tests. Okay, I'm now going to continue the next part of my series of tests between the Canon C300 and the Sony F55. What we are looking at here is a sun test. Now, shooting in South Africa, we often have to deal with the sun, and shooting directly into the sun, exposing for the sun, is a good indicator of the latitude of a camera, especially when you have something in the foreground, as we have here, where we have a branch. Now, any of the sunlight bleeding over the edge of the tree tells me that this sensor cannot quite handle the contrast range or the latitude between the sun's exposure and the branch. In other words, there's not a defined line between where the sun crops over. What happened to my magnification? Sorry, 1 second. So there isn't a clearly defined line from where the sun crops over and intersects with the branch, as can be seen here. So if we just magnify it a little less, you can see here there's no definition here between the sun and the branch. I should have a perfect line here if I was dealing with a sensor with a serious latitude. Okay? Looking at the same shot on the Sony F55, you can see, although I have not quite the sun in the same position as we have here, it doesn't bleed as much over the edges as can be seen here. And if we look at the elements that are sticking into the sun, you can see that there's a little bit cleaner reproduction around the lines here. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to pull the exposure down, or I'm going to pull the gamma curve down on this image, and I'm going to see how much of these branches that are covering the sun here I can actually get back in. If I can get quite a couple of branches back here, or more detail in here, it means that this sensor can actually handle this contrast range a lot better. Okay, so just by pulling them straight, you can see that we do have a little bit more detail appearing inside the sun areas or the area between the exposures, but still no clean line like we saw in the Sony F55. Okay, if I now go to the Canon C300, you see once again we have branches clearly dissecting the sun on the edges here. We do the same test, and once again, pulling it really far, you can see there's no more to be had inside this exposure on the sun here. I'm not even gaining any more here. All I'm seeing is a clearer defined line between where the sun is bleeding over, or the sunlight is bleeding over the branch. Okay, so in terms of this, you can see that both cameras have a significant amount of latitude when it comes to shooting directly into the sun, but clearly can be seen on the Sony F55 here that the patterning or the detail around the sun area is a lot more defined than on the Canon C300. Can you see that?
I can see it, yeah. Very nice.
Okay, as you can clearly see here, looking at a Canon C300, we've got a branch dissecting the sunlight. If I pull it down on the gamma curve, you can see the whole exposure comes down, but I'm not gaining anything more in this detail here. It cuts off right there and there. And as I come up, you can just see the level goes up and down, but I'm not gaining any more detail in the sun here. Okay, moving across to a similar shot on the Sony F5. Here you can clearly see, even though it's out of focus though, we have a sun branch dissecting the sun. Okay, once I pull it down, I'm gaining a significant amount of detail, especially on the fingers of God coming across here, where you can see I'm gaining a bit of detail in the silhouette region, once again demonstrating the better latitude that we have on the Sony F5 compared to the Sony C300 Canon.